Hey guys, we're in Denver, Colorado. This is the home base for Electric Bike Outfitters. They make a bunch of kits, and this is the front range that we're looking at, and it's named after the front range, which you can't see. It's behind these buildings, really pretty mountains, right? And there's like foothills and stuff, and the idea is this is one of their more powerful motors. It's internally geared, which makes it a little bit zippy, relatively compact, relatively lightweight, but it's not as lightweight as their burly kits or their cruiser kits. This weighs about 8.7 pounds just for that hub motor. We took one off without the spokes and without the rim, and that's about what it was. The battery pack is about 7 pounds. So, if you compare this 8.7 to 5 and 0.75 pounds or whatever for the more compact 350 watt motor, you're adding some weight. It's a little bit bigger visually, but you're gonna get a bit more power. So it's 500 watt nominal up to something like 1056, over 1,000 watts. So it's, can definitely peak up there. And I believe it's 30 Newton meters of torque peak. So it's, definitely for a hub motor. Hub motors don't have quite the same torque potential as like a mid-drive, because with a mid-drive you can switch gears. Into a lower gear, you're going to make it easier for the motor. And that's why a lot of mid-drives are like 350 watts or even 250 watts. They still feel like they can climb well. The thing is, those interfere with the drivetrain, so unless you have a really fancy shift detecting mid-drive like a Bosch system or some of the impulse systems, it can make the chain and your derailleur and the sprockets, it can wear those down a little bit, whereas in this case that's all independent, and it frees you up to have a lot more gears. So in this case, you can see we've got 3 chain rings up front and then 7 sprockets in the rear for a total of 21 speeds. This is the Yuba Mundo. It's a cargo bike that's been, really popular over the years. It's a great cargo bike, and it's one that has been so popular because you can have like a hoopty, and you could set a kid in here and their hands will be on this little foam portion, and they won't get pinched, if you scrape a building or trees or something like that while you're riding. They have these running boards, big bags that you can put on. There's all these options, but that all adds weight, that's a lot of work, and that's why it has so many gears to begin with. But having electric assist is one way to make it even easier, especially electric assist that has pedal assist or throttle on demand. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is there are a lot of bikes out there where you want that extra power. Maybe it's climbing in the hills, maybe it's flats, but because you have extra cargo. And Yuba themselves have a purpose-built electric cargo bike, okay? And it does use a mid-drive, and they actually have a couple. Some of the really old ones used front hub motors, and then over the years they used like the Trans X mid-drive. It was called the Spicy Curry, and now they have a new Spicy Curry that uses Bosch, and I love that thing, and it's awesome. And it has, Bosch is one of my favorites because it has shift detection and mid-drive, the weight's low and center and stuff, but there's no throttle, and it costs a little bit more. This kit, as you see it here, with a 48 volt 11 amp hour battery, that's a pretty good size, and then the 500 watt motor that we saw over here, and here's what the battery looks like off the bike, right? So 48 volt battery, this is pretty good stuff, and it's $1,445, so not too bad, especially if you already own a bike like this and maybe been thinking about going electric and you're not sure if you should sell the bike and buy a purpose-built electric bike. I'm actually kind of a fan of that in some ways, because you don't end up with all these wires, all over the place, and you kind of have to tack them to the frame, and there's the controller unit right here that has to be mounted somewhere, and there's just some extra doing. And here's the power cable going into the side of the motor, and it adds some clutter there with the derailleur. But again, you get a trigger throttle option, you get pretty good pedal assist. It's not as responsive or dynamic as like the Bosch system, for example, but it's potentially a lot more affordable, and it's also the kind of thing that you could take off if you sell the bike later. You could put it on a different bike, or maybe throughout the season you can switch it around. So for me, that's kind of cool. It's neat to see an option like this that once it's installed, it actually looks really nice, and a lot of shops can help you install it. In fact, it seems like there's a growing number of shops that actually carry Electric Bike Outfitters stuff right in the store, so you don't have to install it, you just buy it from them. And their prices, they sort of reflect that. Like if you go on eBay or something, you can get some pretty cheap electric bike kits, then you don't have support, you don't have the 1-year warranty that these guys offer, you don't have all the different choices, so One of the choices here is there's a trigger throttle or a half grip twist throttle, a full grip twist throttle. The motor color on this one, I believe it only comes in black, but it does come in a number of different wheel sizes. So right now, I believe these are like 26-inch wheels, pretty standard. Yeah, looks like 26 by 2.15. They also build the motor into a 20-inch wheel size, 24, 26, 28, or 29. So you have a lot of versatility here. You could put it on a mountain bike. You could put it on maybe even a folding bike if you really wanted to. Like a 20-inch wheel, that'd be crazy. You'd have tons of power because the smaller wheel diameter would give you a huge mechanical advantage. I'd probably go with the Burley kit, the 350-watt motor in that case, because it's still very capable. This is just for like the people who feel like maybe they're a bit heavier or they're carrying the cargo and they want that extra power. And to me, it really doesn't cost that much more. You are somewhat limited on options though. They only have it for rear wheel, 135 millimeter hub spacing versus front wheels. They often have 100 millimeter hub spacing. Some rear wheels have 120 and they don't offer it in that either. So it's only 135, only black. They don't have the 16-inch wheel size. It starts at 20, which is fine. And I think, you know, that kind of makes sense, like given what we're looking at here and the use cases that we're talking about. I actually have some of these other options over here. This is the half whip twist throttle. You can see that these parts are color coded. So those are called Joulette connectors and they tend to be highly water resistant. They just sort of like pressure plug into each other. This is an optional display panel that's a little bit simpler for people who have a crowded cockpit. Maybe you're using your phone or something in the middle or GPS. You could get this instead of this fancy display and mount it over here, and it takes a lot less space and it also attracts less attention. Their displays are not removable. This is like a KT LCD display, and it has this remote button pad over here that's pretty easy to reach and interact with while you're riding. One of the other things I love about the default display here is that it has a USB Type A, just like a full-size charging port, so you could plug in your phone and charge that right off the relatively large, high-capacity battery pack. Lithium-ion cells in there. You might think like, oh look, there's another USB port, but that one is not active. They purposely disabled it because they said there was some phantom power draw, and it was just simpler and a little bit easier on the battery just to have a charging port up here. Here is where you plug in the charger, and it's a 2-amp charger. It's not the fanciest thing in the world. Weighs a couple pounds. It's not super small, but at least when you plug it in, the plug isn't anywhere near the crank arms, because a lot of batteries you're plugging in right here and it's just a little bit vulnerable. We also have a fuse right there, and then on the other side, actually before we go there, check out a little LED power indicator. On the other side we have the power button and a keyed ignition, and then the controllers, I think it's built right in. Actually, you know what? This same battery casing is used for some of their kits, and normally the controller would be built in right here, but that's for the 16 amp, whereas I think this one's a 22 amp, so it's a little bit more powerful to handle the extra heat and the electricity that's being sent to that larger motor. Okay, so and this is what the controller looks like inside. You can see it's this nice aluminum alloy case with these, I guess, metal ridges that help to vent that heat. It's really nice. Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, it says 22 plus or minus 1 amp maximum current. Okay, cool. So there's the motor. I don't have this opened up, but you would see planetary gears, and these freewheel efficiently. So compared to something like they have another kit in the lineup it's a gearless hub motor, and it has a little bit of cogging. It's really quiet and there's no gears or anything. It's kind of bulletproof, but it does weigh more. I think it's closer to like 9 pounds, and it's just, there's that cogging. So it's kind of a trade-off. I personally am a fan of geared hub motors, but with the sound and stuff. Here's the charger that I was talking about before. A little bit bigger, but nothing like too out of the ordinary. I think that's a pretty good overview, right? You can't really see the motor on this particular bike because we've got these running boards and this skirt protector going on, but the battery, the weight is positioned pretty well. It's nice that they were able to mount it on the down tube. I think this is just mounting in bottle cage bosses, so there's only 2 points where it's really screwed on. It feels pretty solid, but it's not quite as solid as the Bosch example, where it's a purpose-built electric bike and it's melded into the frame sort of, or maybe there's 3 or even 4 screws. I think this track only has 2. And then we come up to the cockpit. Before you can actually turn the bike on, you have to make sure that the battery's powered on. So that's step one. Step two is you hold the power button right here, and the display comes to life pretty quickly. It's monochrome, grayscale, but it is backlit. So if I hold that up arrow, get the little light icon, and if you pull the brakes, actually, does this one have it? Oh yeah, so they've done an aftermarket, because these are fancier hydraulic brakes, they've got a little sensor and a magnet that they like screwed onto it. So that's one option. Most bikes, it seems like they have mechanical brakes, and then they have nicer levers. They're like these whooshing 5-star levers that have motor inhibitors built in. The default mechanical brake levers, both of them have motor inhibitors. You don't have to modify your brakes. But this is one area where it's nice that at least they have a solution. They're willing to work with you and give you that motor inhibitor feature, because it is nice when you pull the brakes, especially with a heavier bike, with one that's got a lot of extra power. You want to be able to stop quickly. You don't want to be fighting the motor. So I like that they do that. That would light up this little circle with arrows whenever you pulled the brakes, if this had the motor inhibitors on it. And then we have a timer, assist level. There are 5 levels of assist, and 0 is just like a regular bike, so you know, freewheels efficiently and you're just kind of coasting along. You can, if you want to, get into the settings and enable the throttle at 0 if you want, but it's not something that's defaulted. By default, this thing goes 20 miles per hour, and again, you can unplug the throttle and make it class 1, plug the throttle in, now it's class 2, or I think you can kind of overclock it a little bit and get yourself up to maybe 25 miles per hour. So it's an interesting kind of a versatile kit. The way that it's sensing pedal assist is with this 8-magnet cadence sensor, and you can see there's like a little wire here and that sensor, and it listens for these 8 magnets to pass by. And when it notices that movement, it starts or it stops the motor. This is not as fluid or dynamic as like the Bosch multi-sensor, where it's measuring rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque. But again, you're saving some money on this, and I think this is something that's a little bit easier to install aftermarket. You still do have to pull off your crank arm and then mount this little sensor and everything on there, and that's something that the shops can help you with. We were talking about before, getting some help having it installed. Maybe they have like a crank puller and some extra tools, but they're not that expensive, and if you're kind of handy, it could be a fun project. Oh boy. Like hit my head on the bar here. You got to be careful when you're working with bikes. But look at this. They got the little kids like feet rest and stuff. I don't know. I really like these bikes. And I noticed that they have like a rear light, and I'm wondering how that's hooked up. I don't know exactly. It looks like they have a front light too, and maybe it's wired in or something like that. That's a little fancy. If you want to add lights to something like this, you might have to work with your shop, or you might just put on external lights, ones that are like, you take them off, you charge it inside. Anyway, still, it's cool to see all the different variety of what they can do. So 5 levels of assist. 5 is the most powerful. Of course, it's going to use your battery quicker and everything like that. And then we have current speed in miles per hour. If we press this mode button here in the center, that's the power button, it switches from current speed to average speed, max speed, and then down here you'll notice that it's also cycling through, like right now it's voltage, which is another way to be precise on like how full the battery is, up to distance, so that's trip distance, and odometer, it's like total distance on the bike. Then we have current temperature outside, 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and over here we have motor wattage. So yeah, a lot of different options in this display. And then if you hold the up and down buttons, that's where you get into settings where you can limit the top speed. You can change the magnet sensor so it goes a little faster if you want. You can go from miles per hour to kilometers per hour. There's a lot of options, and this is, a lot of these parts are like Chinese made, and their manuals are not usually very intuitive. Like, it's hard to understand what they were saying. So Jason Livingston, the founder of this company, he actually transcribed it like kind of separately and added some of his own notes on their website. So back to like the 1-year warranty, having a little bit better manual, having some wheel size choices. This thing's spoked in with 12 gauge spokes, so it's a little bit heavy duty compared to maybe 13 or 14 gauge spokes. And I like on the Yuba in particular, they have these rims with reinforcement eyelets and stuff. That's not something that comes default on the rims from Electric Bike Outfitters, but they are machine sidewalls, so you can use this with caliper style brakes, like V brakes, or with disc brakes, you can see that's what they're doing here with the hydraulic disc brakes. Really big rotor, and they just mount directly to the motor casing. And their motor casings have been really well done. Like, they're kind of custom. They purposely angle them in a little bit more so it's not going to rub on your dropouts or anything. And there's the mounting point for the disc brake that we just talked about. It's cool. There's a ton of stuff to say with these kits, and it's just nice to have that like extra support and a warranty and like help with the display and everything. Like, yeah, no, it's not perfect. You're compromising on the Cadence Sensor a little bit. 8 magnets is still good. It's not 12. But apparently Jason said they tried 12, they tried 8, and it was a big step up from like 6 or 5, but he didn't think it was worth it to go to 12. And I mean, they might have been saving pennies, so I don't think it was a financial decision. I think it was actually like they wanted to give you either a slow pickup or a faster pickup, which you can set yourself in the display. So maybe it's time to hop on this thing. I think we should get out there and go for a ride. Just gonna push it forward a little bit. Oh boy. Okay. Whoa. These cargo bikes are always a lot of fun. Just gonna kick off, start pedaling. This is actually Jason's bike. He told me that he uses it to pick up his kid and, you know, kind of run errands and stuff. And so it's definitely been used. It's a little bit dusty, but it's performing great. And it's really nice to have that motor. And you definitely feel it, especially in Assist Level 5. You know, cargo bikes can just be kind of slow and heavy sometimes. So as someone with sensitive knees and I do live around hills and I travel a lot of places, it's nice to have that extra boost. So now we're in Assist Level 2, much quieter, really smooth. It's not as quiet as like the Burley or the Cruiser. Remember, that's the 350 watt motor that they offer. You know, it's heavier and stuff. But you can still override with full power from the throttle at any time. So for me, that's a really useful scenario. Like, I'm pedaling fast and then I have to stop at a stoplight or a stop sign, you know, and you're trying to hold this thing and, you know, maybe you're talking to your kid or whatever, you're definitely scouting traffic, and then the light turns green and you're like, ugh, you know, do you have to stand up and really pump? Or, you know, in this case, you can just press that throttle, like, no problem. Really gets going. Yeah, it's pretty satisfying. And of course, using the throttle like this, you're gonna eat through that battery a little bit quicker. But maybe it's just enough to help you get going, and then you can go back to like, okay, I'm in pedal assist 2. Like, it's still giving me it's definitely making it a lot easier to pedal, and then I'm extending the range by helping out, and I'm getting some exercise and everything. So, you know, I love electric bikes, and whenever I see a unique setup like this, and especially useful to have that extra power, it makes me smile. Okay guys, hopefully this isn't just like the worst view ever. I got you as close as we could so you can see the motor, you can hear it. It's gonna be louder because you're mounted to that little kickstand. Remember the kid kickstand thing? Or like footrest. And yeah, I'm gonna be in pedal assist level 5, just pedaling along. Watch for the chain, because I'm gonna start in pedal assist. So the chain will be moving, and then listen for the motor kick on, and then I'll stop pedaling and listen for the motor kick off. Again, it's not super instantaneous, but in my opinion, the throttle really helps to kind of minimize that limitation. There we go. We hit our 20 miles per hour pretty easily. I was using the throttle at the end, and yeah, you know, this is definitely one of the louder motors in their lineup, but it's also one of the more powerful. It has no problem moving this heavier, larger cargo bike. So I hope that gives you guys some feedback. That's the EBO, or Electric Bike Outfitters Front Range 2.0. It's got the Juliet connectors. It's got the nicer display with the USB charging port and some other little upgrades. These guys have been around since like 2015 or maybe a little bit before that. I met Jason. He came down to visit me once with some of his bikes in the early days. He's still in business, so it's been several years. This is their building right here. You know, they actually spoke the wheels, and they ship them out all over the world now. They can actually send these all over. So I don't know, it gets me excited. For the full write-up on this, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, ride safe out there, have fun, and sound off if you have any comments or feedback or whatever. I'll do my best to help you out. See you next time. And as a closing thought here, I'm getting ready to push this bike up the stairs, and the throttle can actually be kind of helpful in that case because it lifts itself a little bit, especially when it's in the rear wheel, which again, the front range kit only comes in rear wheel. But if you're someone who just can't fit this inside and you're parking it in your garage or maybe even outside at a bike rack, the parts should be pretty well sealed against water, maybe not submerging them, but they'll hold up with rain and snow. The thing you want to be extra careful with is the battery, to bring that inside to avoid that extreme heat or extreme cold, and that's going to help to maximize its lifespan, and just to kind of maybe store it at like half full or recharge it every few months if you haven't been using it, to kind of ease it on those cells. Helps it extend the life.